Hello, Kelly Green Hour fans, and welcome to our 8th consecutive victory Green Hour. As in the game of the week in the National Football League, the Philadelphia Eagles go into Baltimore to defeat the Baltimore Ravens 24-19, their first ever win over the Ravens in Baltimore. I'm your host, LG Rowe, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, we both picked the Eagles to lose. We're both ecstatic that we were wrong.
I love being wrong, and I was so wrong on this game. Vic Fangio deserves the biggest round of applause because what did we say during that episode? It was either going to be a defensive showdown where they grinded out every yard, or it was going to be, one of those games where it was a shootout. And I said this is going to be a shootout. I think I did 37-34 or something crazy, and boy, was I wrong. But am I ever happy with the outcome? I'll take being wrong with this type of outcome every day of the week.
Yeah, you had 37-34. I had 28-24. It was 24-19. The Eagles defense, they literally gave up 12 points the entire game. The last 7 came with 3 seconds left in the game. Garbage time touchdown by the Ravens. But the Eagles deserve a ton. That defense, Vic Fangio, everybody on the defense, Jalen Carter especially deserves a ton of credit. But before we jump into the game, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. Subscribe and review all the shows. Let us know how we're doing. Give us 5 stars. That would be much appreciative. And if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts in the comments on the game on Friday. The comments were flying. We had some great conversation, great debate, great dialogue with all the comments. So bring it on again, Little G Griffith. Eagles 10-2. Yes, sir, they are. And we are ecstatic. They're literally like one game behind the Lions. And I have to say this, on Thursday night, we are all Green Bay Packers fans. Because if the Lions lose to the Packers and then the Eagles and Lions, depending on where other losses are, finish with the same record, Eagles would probably get the nod over them for the number 1 seed and getting that all-important bye. The Eagles came out of this game, I guess, fairly healthy, maybe. Dallas Goedert is week to week. He's got a knee thing.
We've been without him for what Covey, feels like most of the season.
The one thing I noticed, there's a huge difference in punt when Cooper DeJean's back there returning punts compared to Britton Covey. Covey is a crash test dummy. He hurt his neck on one of the punt returns. He's not as smooth as Cooper DeJean, who's back there when he returns punts. And I know Cooper DeJean is way too important on defense to be back there returning punts full time, but something has to change because Britton Covey can't do it. I'm sick. He doesn't even need to be on the team anymore. If it's up to me.
If it's what keeps Cooper DeJean strictly on defense, he can absolutely waste a roster spot because where else are they going to go with it? In all honesty, Cooper DeJean, and if you have a guy back there who's going to hold on to the ball, that's really all that matters. Like, to me,
Cooper DeJean can do it. Cooper DeJean's smart enough that he's not going to take big hits. So I think that he could be back there. Reed Blankenship also had a concussion, so it'll be interesting to see if he's available for the Panthers this week. If not, Tristan McCollum came in the game, almost had an interception. We also know that we have Sidney Brown. Paris Campbell was just released, which is interesting. I think that means they're going to be calling up a tight end because both CJ Uzomah and EJ Jenkins are out of call-ups. So one of them, if depending on how long Dallas Goedert's out, is going to have to be activated or have to be brought up to the active roster. You have to think that Devontae Smith will be ready to go this week against the Panthers. He
sounded like he wanted to go on Sunday, but he was trying to play against a week.
Yeah, he was trying to play against the Ravens. They played it smart. It could have had something to do with it being really cold in Baltimore. You don't want that to mess with the hamstring. Give them an extra week. Fortunately for the Eagles, they didn't need them. They were able to come away with the victory. You would think, knock on wood, that they wouldn't need them against the Panthers either. But the Panthers have been playing some good football lately. Took the Chiefs down to the wire last week. Took the Bucs down to overtime yesterday. So you never want to overlook an opponent. So we'll see what happens this week, and we'll talk about the Eagles-Panthers game later this week. But back to this Baltimore game, the Eagles defense, we're going to start with that. They deserve a ton of credit. We know what the Baltimore Ravens have on offense. Lamar Jackson, the two-time MVP, Derrick Henry, one of the top running backs in the league, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Their offensive line is pretty good. But the Eagles defense, for the first time during this 8-game winning streak, gave up over 300 yards of total offense. The Ravens, again, the one thing when we were texting back and forth yesterday, we as an Eagles fans, we have to come to grips that they're not going to start fast. It's not going to happen, and we can't overreact. When it was 9-0, I said it was over. I won't lie. I was texting. I was like, this game's over. I may even have tweeted it. This game was over. But they deserve a ton of credit. I don't know if I don't know what is up with the opening script, the opening 15, but it feels like Sirianni and Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts, they just want to kind of feel out what the opposing defense is doing and see what's going to work later on. Doesn't really make sense. What I think they should do is come out, line up under center, hand the ball off to Saquon, do play action, because I think that's their best offense. But whatever they decided, whatever they've been doing during this 8-game winning streak, it has worked, and they deserve a ton of credit because they don't, getting down by multiple scores, they don't allow that to phase them, and they continue to find ways to get back into games. And then when they get rolling led by Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I think almost it's like they like to wear down their opponent. And then like once they've seen 2 quarters, sometimes even 3 quarters, they're just ready to drive it down a team's throat and take this half worn down defense and take them to town. Like it's crazy. But I mean, Saquon Barkley, I mean, you can do that with a guy like Saquon Barkley. I mean, people are going to look at, Jalen Hurts, and they're going to be like, oh, another, only needed 18 pass attempts. Why would he have to take more? Why take more risks when you don't need to? It was working. They stuck with the run, even though for the first quarter and a half, it looked as though, I mean, me and you both went back and forth, and we were already overreacting to the first quarter and almost the first quarter and a half, because the offense could not get anything going. Saquon Barkley could not get going. It felt like the defense was holding it all together, because let's be serious, it was 9-0, but it felt like it should have been a lot worse. I mean, obviously, at the end of the game, Justin Tucker left 7 points off the board for them, which is obviously something that we can look back on. But I mean, kickers have cost teams games and kickers have won teams games this year. It's going to happen every single year. Just so happens Justin Tucker may very well be coming to the end of his historic career, and we can't forget how great Justin Tucker, was. And I mean, you're not going to get anyone better off the street. So I think you got to ride out Tucker and hope that when you need him most, he's there for you. But I mean, it was a pretty crazy stat. ESPN said 22 points is the total amount of points that the Ravens have lost games by. 22 points is the total amount of points that Justin Tucker has missed for them. So the irony obviously may not perfectly line up, but obviously the irony of that circumstance is what's probably got Ravens fans completely on edge. But back to the defensive side of the ball, Zach Bond continues to have an absolutely at this point, but we just have to hope Zach Bond is happy in Philly and is going to give us a bit of a discount, because he deserves every penny of what he is going to get, and hopefully keep the Chicago Bears away from him right before the start of the tampering period. That's all I got to say, because we don't need to see Zach Bond walk into the Chicago Bears. Jalen Carter, it is amazing to see what that man can do while being held for every 3 seconds of every play. It is absolutely, and you can call a hold. I tweeted it last night. You can call a hold on every single NFL play. Yes, you can. But you need to once in a while call it to have some respect from the players to each other. At this point, there is respect for Jalen Carter, because they know they can't guard him one-on-one without holding him. But there is an absolute disrespect from the referees in doing justice to Jalen Carter. I also put in that tweet that the defense is either, if they start calling holds, they're either going to lose yards because the offense is getting penalized, or Jalen Carter is going to get the sacks that he rightfully deserves. Because at this point, the man should be averaging almost 2 sacks a game if it wasn't for all the holds. I don't like to go in on the refs, but you watch those replays over and over again. Every single defensive play that they showed a replay and they focused in on that front four, Jalen Carter was being held. And they're almost egregious at this point. Like, it's not even attempting to hide it, like just a little grab of the shoulder pad to slow him down. It is full on holding him for 3 seconds, 3 yards, whatever it is. And it's frustrating. And I hope that, somebody was saying that, that Nick Sirianni should, bring it to the attention of the NFL and try and get some grievance rolling and see if that gets the attention on him. Because, at this point, we are being robbed of a potential defensive player of the year type season for Jalen Carter, because offensive lines, the only way they can defend him is to hold him.
I'm pretty sure Sirianni and the Eagles are sending stuff into the league office. What's being done by the league office, that's anybody's guess. There was also that other play. I think it was Milton Williams got through and they were holding on to his undershirt. Like, if there was ever a sign that somebody is being held, like, it was there. And yeah, it seemed like every play. Jalen Carter again played 99% of the snaps. He missed 1 snap. His conditioning is otherworldly compared to last year. Like, last year, he definitely hit the rookie wall, and he took his conditioning serious this offseason, and it's showing on the field. We talked about it when Fletcher Cox decided to retire, who was going to be the guy to step up, and Jalen Carter stepping up big time. And a lot of people are comparing Jalen Carter to Jerome Brown, the former Eagle star from the early '90 Eagles defense, and that's what he's playing like. He's like all over the field. He had one play yesterday that was like a Brandon Graham type play on the handoff to Zay Flowers coming as he was going in motion, and that's usually a play that Zay Flowers is going to be able to get outside and get some yards. Jalen Carter shot right in, didn't go in, didn't shoot in, and like go after Lamar Jackson, and just ran right through Zay Flowers. His IQ of the game and understanding of what potentially could be coming at him is really, really good to watch.
There was even a play where Jordan Davis was chasing, Derrick Henry? He was chasing somebody Lamar down, and I was sitting there and I was like, wow.
Well, you remember last year in the Bills game, he did it in the Bills game, didn't allow Josh Allen to get a first down. And I get it. Jordan Davis doesn't play majority of the snaps. He plays 25, maybe 30 snaps a game. But he's still, when he's out there, he's making a big difference against the run. Yeah, the Ravens, I think, had over 150 yards rushing, but on the plays that, and 40 of that was, again, 40 of that was a garbage time run by Lamar in the fourth quarter as the clock was running out. But if I'm not mistaken, of the plays that Jordan Davis was on the field, 13 of those plays, the Ravens ran the ball, and they only averaged 3 yards a carry. 13 carries, 39 yards. That's what Jordan Davis does. And, there was that debate 3 years ago, should the Eagles have taken Kyle Hamilton over Jordan Davis? Look, we won't know for another couple of years who if they made the right move or not, but Jordan Davis is doing his job for the Eagles. He's not asked to come in here and get quarterback sacks. That's not his job. His job is to help stop the run, and when he's on the field, he does a good job. Do we want him to be in better condition so he can stay on the field? Yes, absolutely. But until we get to that point, hopefully we do get to that point at some time, he's doing what he is supposed to do. So he deserves a ton of credit for what he's able to do on the field.
And in his defense, like, he looks better this year than he did last year. So he is taking steps. Jalen Carter was a freak athlete from the get-go. So all it took was a bit more steps in the right direction, conditioning wise. Jordan Davis was not this athletic specimen. The dude is massive. It's going to take him a while to get the conditioning there.
Quinyon Mitchell, again, another great game. When he was up against Zay Flowers, he allowed 2 catches for 5 yards, I believe. He rarely gets tested. Cooper DeJean, another good game, and he had a tackle that if Avonte Maddox was out there, by the way, Avonte Maddox, we saw him on the field twice. Once was a penalty. The other one, he got beat by Nelson Aguilar. Aguilar just happened to drop the ball. So he got, and that would have been a big play for the Ravens. That could have potentially changed the game around. Again, can we not have Avonte Maddox on the field? Avonte Maddox sucks. He is washed. He is done. I get it. He's best friends with Dallas Goedert, but who the hell cares? He's not an NFL player right now. So stop putting him on the field. The one thing I thought was interesting, and I forget who mentioned it, but the Ravens went a lot of, I think it was 2 tight end sets to get Cooper DeJean off the field. And they were able to move the ball when Cooper DeJean was off the field. But the Eagles, once Vic Fangio adjusted, and the Ravens kind of adjusted their offensive game plan. And once DeJean was on the field, like again, DeJean all over the place. And that tackle that he had on Derrick Henry, how many people in the NFL are going to make that tackle? Not many. They're either going to lay it because they don't want to try to tackle a big guy like that or get run over or stiff arm by a big guy like that. You could sell how technically sound he is. That was that's a tackle that's going on a tape of how do you tackle somebody, hit, wrap, drive, and what Cooper DeJean did was the perfect example of tackling at any level of football. And that was just fun. And it got the sideline hype, got the defense hype. And you knew at that point that the game was over and the Eagles were going to win.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge stop. Like the stop of all people, Derrick Henry, that way was just massive. It's such a momentum shifter. Like the momentum was already rolling away from the Ravens, but that play just absolutely buried the momentum and made it near impossible for them to get anything going after that play. And yeah, I agree. Like Cooper DeJean, they definitely tried to take advantage of him. He did allow 5 receptions for 40 yards, but he continues to make those big stops. He continues to make those big plays in ways they continue to avoid. Well, they definitely avoid Kenyon Mitchell's side of the field. But there's just some incredible stuff from this defense altogether. And the great part about this whole defense, they're young. There's some pieces, of course, that are going to need to change. There's some pieces that obviously are getting older. But like game 1 without Brandon Graham in a game that I thought we would definitely notice it, the interior of the defensive line stepped up in a massive way. If you go by PFF, it was 9 pressures for Milton Williams and 8 for Jalen Carter. 17 half the pressures. 17 of 35 pressures up for this defense came from 2 guys at the interior of this defensive line.
Also deserves a lot of credit. He was all over the field. He played a career high in snaps.
Yep. Josh Sweat had a great game. It felt like this defensive line was constantly in the backfield. Like 72 plays they were out there for, 35 of them had a pressure. That's astronomical. Yep. And I mean, obviously, pressure could mean different things for people, but you might be off a few up or down, but you're still between, probably at least 30 pressures or close to 30 pressures total. And you could tell during the game, Lamar Jackson was being flushed out of the pocket a lot. When the run plays were happening, there was bodies all over just Eagles jerseys all over the backfield all over Derrick Henry. It was an absolute masterclass by Vic Fangio. And the best part, like, it never felt like this game was getting out of reach for the offense. I was just getting frustrated with the offense. And this is becoming just an every single week routine where we're probably going to be frustrated with the offense for the first quarter, maybe even the whole first half. And then they turn it on in the second half, as long as the defense can keep them in it. And so far, the defense has proven we're willing to help you stay in the game, but come on, from time to time, give the guys a little bit of help, because it could have been a lot worse, but we were lucky that defense is something.
And you have to think that the defense took it as a challenge, knowing that who they were going up against in Lamar and Derrick Henry and that offensive line. They want to go out there and prove that, what they've done against some high-powered offenses. The Bengals, the Commanders, Even though the Bengals record isn't good. Joe Burrow's numbers are MVP like. He's just on a 4-8 team. Holding them to under 20 points. Like, you're talking about a couple of offenses that average in high 20s, 30 points. And Washington and Baltimore both averaged around 30 points, and the Eagles held them under 20. So, like, the defense took it personal, and the defense wanted to go out there and prove that they're legit, and they're legit. Let's be honest. Now we say that and then watch them give up 35 to the Carolina Panthers, which would be so annoying if that were to happen, but I don't see it happen. Crabby Old Man says, slow start was okay. It took me until the third quarter to get nervous. That third quarter, the Eagles had 3 plays. I was talking to a coworker of mine, and this stat, do you know how many times Jalen Hurts passed the ball in the second half?
Oh, probably. He only passed it 18 in the whole game. What, maybe 4 times?
Twice. They had the ball for 3 plays in the third quarter, and then Saquon went wild in the fourth. Like, I was like, oh, that can't be true. But then I started thinking, and I was like, well, the Ravens had the ball for like 13 minutes in the third quarter. Then they went to the running game. Saquon kind of took over in the fourth, and Jalen with his legs. So I was like, wow, like, he threw the ball twice in the second half. You don't see that happen. And then, like, a lot of people are like, see, he's a game manager, and he can't win you, or he can't be trying. Like you mentioned earlier, and I think we've said it over the last couple of weeks, why would you go away from what is working? The offensive line bullies people. They wear down opposing defenses, and Saquon owns the second half. Saquon's second half numbers alone would make him the 4th highest rusher in the NFL this year. Think about that. He is the leading rusher in the NFL right now. But if you just took his second half yards, he is the 4th highest leading rusher in the league. Like, why would you go out there and force passes? I get it. You have A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Devontae when he's healthy. But the receivers, and I think it works for this year, maybe next year, but the receivers already got paid. Dallas Goedert's really the only one who hasn't, but A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have gotten paid. And A.J. is used to being in this type of offense because in Tennessee it was the Derrick Henry show. But, like, again, why would you force passes? There's a reason why Jalen hasn't turned the ball over. He has 2 turnovers in the last 8-9 games. Why? Keep running the football, and that's where I think going under center and doing play action helps Jalen too, because the slants were working for A.J. Brown yesterday. So that's what they should. That's where the offense, I believe, should kind of be leaning towards.
Yeah, there was a stat at some point they didn't do any play action in the first quarter, and as soon as they turned to play action in the second quarter, Jalen Hurts was like 6 for 6 for X amount of yards, and he was so much better under center and doing play action. It's crazy to think. And I mean, we praise quarterbacks when they take what's given to them. When teams play us and they just take what's given to them, whether it's a check down after check down or a 3-yard pass and let the guy do the rest with his legs, we praise that. Why are people not able to praise the fact that Jalen Hurts doesn't have to throw the ball? This is the offense. This works because you have the threat of Jalen Hurts' legs, which he didn't have to use that much. You have the threat of Jalen Hurts' ability to make big plays. Didn't really have to use that much. You have the threat of Saquon Barkley, the number one. You can officially declare it, thrown it, number one rusher in the NFL this year. And then you got A.J. Brown, who silently went 5 for 66 yards, which was huge. It was almost half of Jalen Hurts' passing yards. Like, what? And then you got Devontae Smith when healthy. Like, you don't. And then this offensive line, you don't need you. They're taking what's given to them. Why force anything else when you don't need to? Derek Carr had a game where it was like he set one of the records for the best completion percentage against the Eagles. And that game was praised because he took what was given to him. If Jalen Hurts, if the ball is being taken from him and put into his running back's hands or put behind his offensive line, who is he to sit there and say, hey, Kellen, I'd like to throw despite how good this offense is working, I'd like to throw the ball a little more. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to take what's given to you. And that is just what so happens to be happening for this Eagles offense. Teams aren't purposely giving them the run. They just cannot stop this running offense whatsoever. So, I mean, and then when you look up and down the stat sheet, if you were to tell me the Eagles won this game while losing the penalty battle significantly, losing the possession battle significantly, less rushing yards, less passing yards, less total plays, less first downs, and you were to tell me they lost this game, I would say you're crazy. But if you don't look at the box score, don't look at the stats, if you actually watched the game, it was truly a masterclass from the defense and a masterclass from Kellen Moore and the offense to stick with what was working. They're playing old school, smart football, and it is so impressive to watch.
And, Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, they all deserve a lot of credit because we know that the Ravens came into this game second in the NFL against the run, and the Eagles didn't give up against it. They allowed the offensive line to wear that front of the Ravens down. And what happens in the fourth quarter? Saquon goes off, gets over 60 yards rushing, has a 25-yard touchdown run. He knew it was coming. They knew it was coming. I think A.J. Brown said after the game, like they told Saquon, man, put the Superman cape on and go out there and do you. And that's exactly what happened.
Tech, you did tell us to book this one. It's funny because Jazz Fusion's not here. I would love to get his take because apparently the Ravens had so many weapons. There was no way we were stopping them, but unfortunately he only showed up.
The DeJean tackle was so overrated. DeJean was on him before Henry could do anything. One thing I'll say about that is that one thing I'll say about that, a lot of corners, especially rookies, will be timid. They'll go up and then they'll stop and stutter their feet. And that's what Henry wants you to do. And then Henry will run through you, stiff arm you, go around you because he does have speed. What did DeJean do? He kept his feet going. He didn't stop. And that's what like you said, that's what you want. If that was somebody else, if that was Maddox would have been timid. Maddox would have went up there, probably stopped, stuttered his feet, and would have got ran through. You don't
probably
want
would have drew a penalty somehow. I don't know how he would have done it.
Right through.
But it's true. Like that's just good technique. That's just good football from DeJean. And not only that, how many slot cornerbacks are taking down a 250-pound running back? It just doesn't happen that often in the NFL. Is it overrated? Maybe because it looks so beautiful. But that's the thing. It looks so technically sound and so good that people are going to talk about it. They're going to show it as one of the main highlights of that game because it was also such a massive momentum shifter for the game as well.
Yeah, because if he could have got a first down there, that was a third down play, made it fourth down. What happened on the next play? Almost an interception by Tristan McCollum as the Ravens went forward on 4th and 8. So,
and something I didn't get to talk about on Friday because of probably all the comments and everything, the Ravens entered this game as one of the top 3 teams on third down conversions. They went 6 for 15 in this game. 40%. Like that's like they were converting at, I think it was like a 60-something% clip on third downs. And we held them to just 37% clip. Like that was just more masterclass defense. But like that was something the Eagles struggled with. Getting offenses off the field on third down stops was something that the Eagles have struggled with all season, and to do it against one of the top teams and top offenses in this way was definitely impressive.
And this is the second loss for Lamar Jackson to an NFC team. The first, I'm still shocked, was the Giants. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the first time the Eagles had beaten the Ravens in Baltimore. Crabby Old Man says, TQ Tech. That tackle was an example, as Connor was saying, playing smart, not harder. Okay, maybe smarter and harder, but it was a stud play. Tech says Hurts is making checks before the plays and making reads during the plays. He's not just handing the ball off. Yeah, he has definitely been making more audibles throughout the game, and he's kind of just allowing he's running the offense the way the offense is run. Is this a typical Kellen Moore offense? No, but he has adjusted his kind of play calling because the Eagles are the best running team in football. So if you have a stud like Saquon, use him. Until a team proves that they can stop you, why would you do anything else?
Yeah, and especially like Kellen Moore, like whoever's watching from the box is there. Eventually, their mic is shut off. Hurts has to make some of these decisions for himself and plays for himself. And he does. And I mean, yeah, you're playing to your players' strengths. Kellen Moore used to be a guy like you could almost guarantee that he was with, there were seasons with Dak Prescott that he was 40, 50 pass attempts a game. That's just not the way that he's playing. He's playing to his team and his players' strengths. And any offensive coordinator should do the same thing in theory.
Ray Old says the Eagles played smart football versus the Ravens. They didn't do anything out of character, took care of the ball, and stayed consistent. Again, Jalen has 2 turnovers, I think, during this 8-game losing streak. Saquon has that one BS fumble that they called against, was that the Washington game? No. It was the Jaguars game because they were wearing Kelly Green uniforms when he was down. But yeah, so the Eagles are definitely being smart when it comes to protecting the football. Ravens 76B more. Welcome aboard. You guys got this one. See you in the Super Bowl. It would be a nice Super Bowl matchup. Hopefully Lamar and the Ravens can win in the playoffs. That's the one. Lamar, again, I mentioned on Friday, I'm a huge Lamar fan. The one thing that he is missing, he has the MVPs. He's had the number 1 seed. He got to the AFC Championship game last year and then lost to the Chiefs, but the Chiefs seem to do that to everybody. They have to get over that hump. I would love to see an Eagles-Ravens Super Bowl. I'd like to see an Eagles-Pittsburgh get an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. I don't want to see the Chiefs again just because I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That would be that Eagles-Steelers game in a couple weeks. Don't want to look past the Panthers, but man, Eagles have never beaten Russell Wilson either. So that's it. Eagles have never beaten Russell Wilson, and the Steelers have never beaten the Eagles in Philly. So one of those streaks is coming to an end in 2 weeks, which hopefully it's the former on that one. We want the Eagles to beat Russell Wilson. Rayo Man said, you can guarantee defensive coaches around the NFL are going to have that tackle in their meetings for study. That's what I said. Hit, wrap, drive. That was the perfect form tackle. B. Moore says, good defense by the Eagles. I have to admit we will be different next. I mean, I expect if there's a matchup in New Orleans in in a couple of months, I expect the game to be similar, but Baltimore will definitely make some adjustments to. And one thing Lamar said after the game was his mom cussed him out because he didn't run more because he had open lanes. And that's the one thing I think Lamar is trying not to be as much of a running quarterback as he was in the past. He wants to use his arm, and he has definitely improved the passing portion of his game. But when you're in a Super Bowl, if you get there, he's going to do everything he can to win. So I would expect him to definitely.
And I mean, we said to make him beat us with his arm, and Lamar Jackson was throwing a good ball. I mean, he just on a lot of plays he didn't have a whole lot of time to throw. The offensive line was folding, and the defense was getting pressure and getting in the backfield a whole lot. So that makes life a whole lot harder on you when you have so much pressure on you. Like if you're under pressure on almost half of your offensive snaps, that's going to make things very, very tough for you. And we saw that it was for Lamar Jackson because when he had time and when he was able to make the plays, he was making the plays. He could beat us with his arm, no doubt, but the defense was stopping them on all 3 levels. It was really impressive. But we know, I mean, if we play the Ravens again, do we get this exact same outcome? I don't necessarily believe that it would be the exact same outcome. And just as the Ravens would adjust, Vic Fangio has been one of the kings of making adjustments when needed.
And you would think that the Eagles offense, I mean, you would in theory have a healthy Devontae. They might pass the ball a little bit more than they did this game. But again, it's for the Eagles right now, it's the Saquon Barkley show. Like, why would you go away from Saquon? Again, we talked about it on a Friday. He'll get 3 yards, he'll get 4 yards, he'll get 5 yards, and then boom, he'll bust a 25-yarder. Just he trusts his blocks, he trusts the offensive line, and he's never had blocking like this in the first 6 years of his career with the Giants. It's never happened. And
he'd be on pace for. I mean, he very well is on pace to break the all-time record for most rushing yards in a season. Imagine if you had before this 5 years of an offensive line like this. He'd probably be on a historic pace altogether for like running back record, like historically going down as one of the greatest of all time. But unfortunately, injuries got to him, and a bad defensive line or offensive line ended up being his demise. Some freak injuries. Like when you look back on some of these Saquon Barkley injuries, to sit there and say he was injury prone would be, you're just not watching. Like one of those ankle sprains, somebody rolled up on him. Like there's just freak accidents that happen in football, and I don't think it's that he was injury prone.
It seems as if the running back prowess is starting to become more of the front, become like the Eagles have Saquon, the Ravens have Lamar, or excuse me, have Henry, the Packers have Jacobs. Like maybe now, like because defenses are getting smaller and faster, now teams are going to be like, all right, now we'll just bully you and we'll run it right at you. It went from running being a primarily like let's run focused league to now, or to then it went to being a pass happy league, and then defenses had to adjust to that. Let's get quicker, let's get smaller, let's get faster. And now that that's happened, certain teams, and maybe Howie has got ahead of the curve on this by realizing that and then signing Saquon. And it's like, all right, now let's just bully. Let's use our power. Let's run right at these small defenses so that in a couple of years when defenses start to get big again, then it'll be another, like there's these ebb and flows when it comes to the NFL. And right now teams like the Eagles, teams like the Ravens, teams like, the Lions and the Bills and, Green Bay, they're kind of these smart organizations ahead of the curve and going to take advantage of it while they can. This is like, you talk about, a lot of people thought San Francisco was going to have a big window. They got killed with injuries this year. So it's not happening. And now, like, you think the Eagles have a window, the smart salary cap, the way how he does things. The Ravens kind of have a window, you think, like, they got to battle with the Steelers in their own division, and they still have the Chiefs and the Bills over in the AFC, but they can beat anybody. Doesn't matter who they play. They can go out there and beat anybody. The same can be said for, like, a lot of people are clamoring to just get us to Detroit and Philly in the NFC Championship game. That's what we want to see. And that will be a barn burner of a game. And talk about, we thought that the Eagles Baltimore game was physical. Eagles Detroit will be just as physical as what that game was yesterday in Baltimore.
Absolutely. I think like you could see, like, if the Eagles and the Lions continue to remain, where they are at the top of the standings in the elite of the elite in the NFC, that could be a rivalry that you wish you could see more often. You're not going to see it every year, but you probably wish to see it every single year because they just both play with such a mentality and there's such a culture built around these teams focused on two CEO type head coaches. Like Dan Campbell does not call plays or do any of that. And Nick Sirianni did try to call plays and had that ripped away from him, rightfully so. Those guys are CEO, culture building type coaches, and look at the cultures that they've built. Their players respect them, they listen to them, and they play exactly like their personalities. And it would just be such a great, I would never want that competitive of a team to be in our division that you'd have to go to war with every single year. But imagine watching that type of matchup for the next 3 or 4 years, 2 times a year. It would just be crazy to see.
That's what you get with Ravens and Steelers.
That's what you get. I mean, it's a shame because like the Bengals, if their defense wasn't so terrible, would be in this similar conversation.
Well, look at the NFC North. Packers, Lions, and Vikings. Like it's just every time.
And even the Bears are Matt Eberflus 4 weeks ago hiring away from probably being, not a 5-5 team, but maybe a couple games above 500.
All they had to do was knock down that Hail Mary against Washington, and who knows what would
maybe take your time out in the last game. Like there's
Ravens 76 B More says, I just subbed to your channel. Appreciate the respectable debate. Thank you. Welcome to the fam. We appreciate it. We do really hope we get that an Eagles Ravens, another matchup in February in a couple months. That would be a lot of fun. Crabby Old Man says this win means too much in large part because the Ravens are such a formidable opponent. Yeah, a lot of people looked at the Eagles 7-game, now 8-game winning streak and were like, all right, who did you beat? I mean, it was the Browns, the Giants, the Jaguars, a 4-8 Bengals team, Washington, who seems to maybe be faltering, even though they had a big they won big this weekend over the Titans. The Cowboys, who aren't playing that well. Like, you haven't beaten anybody. Beating the Ravens is big. And if they can do the same in 2 weeks, beat the Steelers, then like a lot of people are of the ilk that the Eagles are one of definitely the top 2 in the NFC and probably top 2 or top 3 in the entire NFL right now. Just the way that they're built and the roster, the talent that they have. But yeah, it definitely meant a lot beating a team like Baltimore just to show that they can go out there and beat like some of the heavyweights in the league.
Yeah, I mean, you say it means too much. I mean, it means so much either way you say it. It was that way for a reason. I mean, you go back, you look at what the pregame show was predicting and what the NFL Network was predicting. Nobody was really giving the Eagles a fight and chance. They might have thought the game was going to be close, but for the large part, the majority picked against the Eagles and picked the Ravens. I mean, hell, me and LJ picked the Ravens to win this game. But that's why this game meant so much, because this was the prove-it game to come out of this easy portion of a schedule and beat a Ravens team. And then if you can go and, like you said, if you can go and beat the Steelers, I mean, there's the disrespect should absolutely dissipate. It already should. And you can already see in the way that conversations are flowing on national media that it's definitely shifting. And the whole discussion has slowed from, the bye week where it's like, should they fire Nick Sirianni? Is Nick Sirianni going to be fired at the end of the season if it's not like Super Bowl or bust? I can almost promise. And at that point, I said they're not going to fire him in season. He's got one of the highest win percentages. And at this point, I don't think you see him being fired even at the end of this season, Super Bowl or no Super Bowl.
Like, it depends on if they were to lose their, like, say, the first playoff game.
But I mean, I guess if things got really like embarrassing at the end and there was things to question. And I mean, Kellen Moore's setting himself up. We know Vic Fangio's not going anywhere. He doesn't want a head coaching job. He doesn't want to be put as a assistant head to the head coach for a chance to move into a head coaching role. He's not going to move for any of those opportunities. He's fine where he's at. But Kellen Moore is once again proven that, for the 7 or 8 openings he's probably going to be interviewed for half of them. There's a chance he could be on the move. And then how much of the success lands on Kellen Moore versus Nick Sirianni, then that debate will rage on in the offseason as well. But I mean, this was.
So I have a question. So they're on an 8-game winning streak right now. They have the Panthers. You hate to assume, but say that's 9. Then the Steelers. Like, I think of the 5 games left. I mean, the Eagles are going to be favored in all 5, but 2 tough ones: the Steelers and Washington. Do you think it would be better for them to lose one? I'm not saying one of them, but like lose a game before the playoffs start. Or do you want to go into the playoffs on a 13-game winning streak? Because then if you go into the playoffs on a 13-game winning streak, that's all-time pressure on you.
It is. It's definitely a lot of pressure, but you also want that first round bye if you can get it. I mean, part of me, like, I get it for the health of the team and stuff, but I think I said this last year that I'd rather the teams continue to play because you don't want to get that rust. We already start slowing games. We already end up behind the 8 ball through usually after one quarter, after one whole half. It's almost like you want the Eagles to have to play that through, but for our health, you kind of don't want them to have to play that through either. I'm hoping, and I don't think that this team would fold to any type of pressure because it feels like their mentality has shifted a lot. Their culture has shifted a lot from last season. Last season's team they did fold under the pressure of being, we were what, 9-1 or
10-1.
what, 10-1, and then we ended up completely folding like that. But and we've spoken about the culture of that locker room versus the culture of this locker room and the culture of this team and the mentality of this team. It just feels, and I think you said it last week, and we probably said it a few times in recent episodes, this just feels different.
The
Something
vibes are
just
different. I hate
feels
that vibes
really
word, but
good.
they're different. Yeah. I mean, they got professionals at the coordinator level. Getting somebody like GJ back, the attitude that he brings, just it has
Yeah, you don't
changed everything.
rookies. Like Brian Johnson, as much as we respected him, was a rookie. Sean Desai was, as much as we may have respected him and other teams may respect him, was kind of a rookie from, the play call and perspective and managing a room full of men. And it feels like those guys lost control of the room full of men. And Nick Sirianni couldn't gather them back in because they just didn't respect the person who was leading, who was calling the plays, and the one who was marching them out on the field and telling them what to do when they went out on the field. And now you see it in Vic Fangio. Like, it's crazy. Like, to hear, you like to think about what happened in a locker room that so many people dislike Vic Fangio in Miami, because these guys
Because they're
play,
soft.
and maybe it's the head coach too. Maybe it's that type of mentality. Like Vic Fangio brought a more intense mentality. Nick Sirianni brings a more intense mentality. McDaniel seems like this laid back guy. Doesn't like it. It seems different over there. And Vic Fangio just tried to get the most out of his guys and put them in a position to succeed. And it just feels like they didn't want to, or there
That
was
was like the
something about how
Washington
he did it that
offense.
rubbed them the wrong way.
That was like the Washington offensive players not liking Eric Bieniemy because he was coaching them tough. Ray Old says Barkley reminds me of Barry Sanders, but a few steps faster, in my opinion. I mean, I still think Barry Sanders is the best running back I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm only 37, so I didn't get to really watch like Walter Payton and whatnot. And I also say, like, Emmitt Smith only has the all-time rushing record because of the offensive line that he was behind. Imagine Barry Sanders behind that Dallas offensive line. What he would have done with that, with the NFL record, rushing record. He would have obliterated it. I think Barry definitely did more with a lot less. And it's a shame that, like, the Lions organization, with the Lions, the two all-time greats just retired early because they were playing with the Lions, and this is when the Lions were bad, obviously, and Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. Ravens, B. Moore says, Steelers offense is nothing to be afraid of. Their defense is really good. I see you beating them bad. Their defense is really good. TJ Watt is legit, obviously. Joey Porter Jr. is pretty good. It'll be a nice battle, TJ Watt versus Lane Johnson and or Mailata. That'll be a fun battle with him and see what he can do against Jalen Hurts. Let's see what else we got up here. Their defense is really good. TJ Watt and Highsmith are very disruptive. Yep, just what we said. Walter Payton behind our line. Put Walter Payton, Barry Sanders. Put either of them behind our line and see what they would do. Again, I think Barry Sanders is the best running back of all time, personally. I mean, we'll see if anybody like Adrian Peterson was very good. Emmitt Smith obviously is the record. I mean, I can't say a Cowboy was the greatest of all time. No. We'll see what see Saquon, like, if he can have. He's in year 7. If he can have 5 more really good years, and I'm not saying they would all be with the Eagles, he'll at least definitely have 2 with the Eagles. But beyond that, like, who knows how long he wants to play, and if he stays healthy, like, I don't see him breaking any records. But it's like you mentioned earlier. It's a shame that he was stuck with the Giants in Jersey, with that crap organization on that crap turf, with those crap offenses. It kind of really hurt the beginning of his career.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I pointed out some of those injuries seemed like just freak accidents, just tripping, rolling up on something. It's crazy to think what he could have been in behind some of these much better offensive lines. Like, it's so, like, because New York Giants fans just were not behind him. Some of them didn't want him to be paid. Some of them wanted him out. A lot of them were the ones that were saying, "Oh, he's injury prone, he's washed," and then he just gets off of that turf, gets out from behind that offensive line, and it's such a completely different story. I'm not going to say Daniel Jones, it would be a different story, but I mean, a good offensive line probably would help Daniel Jones, and an offensive coordinator who would like to coach up a quarterback might help Daniel Jones. But I mean, Saquon Barkley, you knew coming out what he was. And to think that, you got to this point, like it wasn't like when we drafted Jalen Reagor, we were not expecting him to be this all-time great, and you knew that he wasn't going to be. When Saquon Barkley came out, he was one of those players who was tagged with the generational, tag that often gets thrown around, maybe a little too much gets thrown around. And unfortunately, his chance to be a generational NFL talent was kind of wasted behind an organization and an offensive line that did not do him any sort of justice at the beginning or throughout the early part, the best part of a running back's career.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm glad that we have Saquon right now. And we'll see what he's able to do for us, going forward. And he's definitely squarely in the thick of the MVP race. So we'll hopefully see him continue. And obviously, if he breaks Eric Dickerson's record, he definitely. I think he's got to be the leader offensive player of the year at least. And we'll see what happens. I mean, the way Josh Allen's playing right now, though, it's a quarterback award, the MVP. So if Josh Allen keeps it up, he's definitely going to win the MVP. So before we finish off, who was your player of the game against the Ravens?
I mean, I think if I'm going with one, quite simply, it's going to be Saquon Barkley. I mean, my debate rested between like Zach Bond and Saquon Barkley because Zach Bond has been just so instrumental. Like, what would this defense look like without Zach Bond? What would this offense look like without Saquon Barkley? It's two things I don't want to have to imagine, and I'm so happy I don't have to imagine. But it's got to go to Saquon Barkley because as soon as that, it wasn't the third quarter, but as soon as that fourth quarter, Saquon Barkley stepped in, the game was over. The defense was setting it up for you, and they just needed someone on the offense to just take it out of the park. And Saquon Barkley took it out of the park. He got that key touchdown that put them ahead that they never looked back from. He was able to allow Kellen Moore to not give up on the run, continue to take the weight off of Jalen Hurts or having to throw the ball, potentially putting the ball into harm's way. He made it so you didn't have to do that. And I think it's so hard to take that away, especially in a game where you were really watching reigning MVP versus potential MVP candidate versus, the two league leading rushers. And Saquon Barkley definitely stood out as the better of all three of them last night.
Mine? I'm going Braden Mann.
He had some amazing. We didn't get a chance to talk special teams, but
the one at the 1 yard line, one at the 5 yard line. I think. Like, by the way, that's a look towards my unheralded player of the week on Friday. But yeah, he pinned the Ravens back a couple times, had some big punts. So we've been clamoring. Like, we lost the Super Bowl. I mean. That wasn't the primary reason why we lost the Super Bowl on a bad punt that allowed Kadarius Toney to have a good punt return. But like, Braden Mann has been very, very good for the Eagles, and so glad that we were able to
definitely underrated. I think it was 5 punts inside the 20, which you don't like to hear that you punted 5+ times. But I mean, to put 5 inside of the 20 and then like 2 or 3 of those were even inside the 10. I mean, that's like coffin corner punting at its finest. Mm-hmm. If you ever played Madden back in the day where you got to do the coffin corner punt drill.
I love the coffin corner
that was definitely Braden Mann, like underrated performance when you think like, cause you fixate on the defense, you fixate on Saquon Barkley, but you don't think about how important it is to bury Lamar Jackson. To think of a drive going from 70 yards or that you have to take 70 yards or 60 yards or 50 yards versus having to take a drive 99 yards or 90 plus yards. It's a game changer for any offense to have to think about that. It's a daunting task for any offense, even if you are the Ravens, who are top 3, top 1 in the league.
Yeah, I mentioned on Friday how the kicking games too could potentially affect this game, and Elliott I think he got over his struggles from against was at Washington, and he is now back to his ways. I think it's safe to say. And Tucker, it's unfortunate because Tucker is the GOAT. And he missed 2 field goals and an extra point, 7 points. They lost by 5. Now, who knows? I don't think they would have scored as easily like on the last drive like they did. The Eagles kind of playing prevent defense, but still, those were big 7 points. It's crazy how 1 point makes a big difference. 9-0 felt a lot better than 10-0 would have after he missed the extra point. So we'll see what happens. But that when it was 9-0 and then he missed that extra point, I was like, 9's not as bad as 10. 10-0 might have felt different. It's weird, I know, 1 point. But yeah, so the Eagles are now 10-2, first place in the NFC, second place, a game behind the Detroit Lions, who play the Green Bay Packers Thursday night. So we are big Packers fans this week, by the way, because if the Packers, this is the last chance for the Eagles, if the Eagles and Lions were to finish with the same record, to have the tiebreaker ahead of them. Common opponents, Green Bay is the last one. The game is in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. So we need the Packers to come through and beat the Lions for us if we want another shot to potentially have the number 1 seed. I would love to get Detroit and Jared Goff outside of that dome. If I'm not mistaken, Detroit will have played 14 games inside this year. 14. Obviously, Green Bay and the Vikings are Green Bay and Chicago, are two outdoor games. But yeah, I don't.
Where do you lie on that debate? Do you think there should be, because it feels like every team is shifting more to like a dome or some sort of covered stadium?
I want the Bills. I don't want the Bills to get a dome. I don't want the Eagles to get a dome. I don't want Cleveland to get a dome. This is like, you have home field advantage for it. If you have a dome, what home field advantage do you have? Like, this is the Northeast cities. Like, it gets cold. Sometimes you got to play in the elements. Play in the elements. Don't be babies. So if the Eagles ever get a new stadium, it better not be a dome.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about that and say that it's football weather. Like when you have to play in those situations and you're put out in those circumstances, there's some all-time great games that happen as snow games or what you would call weather games. And I think, football is one of those sports that was started outside and should stay outside. If 32 teams all have domes or some sort of coverage, just isn't that, it feels like it takes a little bit away. I mean, it makes life a lot easier for a lot of these guys, but to the same time, for all the people watching, some of those games are great. Like that game last night, I mean, of course, 49ers got spanked, but like that's if the 49ers are 2 or 3 guys healthier, that's probably a really good game. It goes down as one of the better games of the whole season because it's just those types of games are the types you want to see.
Red Eclipse says Detroit could lose to Chicago in the rematch. It was close indoors. I can only imagine how they'd play in Chicago. Detroit does have a tougher schedule than the Eagles. The Eagles have the Panthers, the Steelers, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants. The Lions have.
I have it up here. They have
Packers.
the Packers.
Let me see if I know this by heart. The Packers, the Bills, the Bears, the Niners, the Vikings.
You got it in order too. Even better.
It's sad. Like I saw it earlier today, and I somehow remembered it. The Lions in theory could lose to the Packers, the Bills, and the Vikings. Like that would be 3. That would get them to 4 losses. I don't think they're going to lose. I think at most the Lions are going to lose 2 more.
It's a shame that the Packers, Bills, and Vikings games are all in Detroit indoors.
Yeah, that does suck.
Like if one of those 2 ended up being like at the Packers,
and then
not really the Vikings,
and then they're in San Francisco, and that's California, so it's not like it's going to be cold.
Well, and then what are the 49ers going to look out like that by week 17 at this point? But if one of those Packers or Bills games could have been outside, it could have been huge.
Yeah,
such a game changer.
I think the Lions lose at most 2 more games, so that puts them at 14-3. We would definitely need one of those losses to be to the Packers. The Eagles, Brediclitt's question: if it's week 18 and the Eagles get the number 1 seed with a win, and a Detroit lost to Minnesota, do you play starters? Well, I can guarantee the NFL is going to start those games at the same time. They're not going to let one team play before the other.
They're already all of week 18's games are to be determined because they're going to be that
it's either going to be played Saturday or Sunday. I think if the Eagles and the line, like the Eagles needed the line, they would play that. I'm guarantee you the Eagles, Giants, Detroit, Minnesota, 4:25 Sunday, guarantee it. If they're 100%. Battling for the number 1 seed,
absolutely.
But I do so. I think the Eagles will start the starters, but will be scoreboard watching. You would think the division's already wrapped up and they at least get the number 2 seed. You know that's fact. If they win, they get the number 1 with a Detroit loss. They'll start, scoreboard watch, see what Detroit's doing against Minnesota. If Detroit's blowing Minnesota out, pull everybody. If Detroit's in a battle, I mean, you would think, though, the Eagles are playing the Giants. By halftime, the game could be over, so we might not have to worry about the starters playing in the second half anyway. So circumstances will definitely determine that, but there will be a lot of scoreboard watching week 18 if this were the circumstances. That is true too, because we saw what happened in Sirianni's first year here. He even mentioned it in his press conference, I think after the game, or it might have been last week, whenever it was. But he said, Devontae was a couple yards or a couple catches away from the Eagles rookie record. They started him. He went out, got the catches quick, and pulled him out. So it will depend. How close is he? Is he 150 yards away from Dickerson's record? Is he 100 yards away? Is he 200? So again, circumstances. I mean, against the Giants, he could easily get it. The Giants suck. Dexter Lawrence probably won't be playing. He's their best defensive player. He could go out there and get 300 yards against the Giants if he wanted to.
For those listening in podcast form, Reddit Clips asks, would you also factor in how close Saquon is to the rushing record?
Yeah.
I mean, I would follow you if it's close. If he's 150 yards away, don't risk the man's limbs.
Yeah, we saw what happened when last year when week 18 they played AJ and they didn't have AJ in the playoff game. He got hurt again. It was that crap life field.
I mean,
Could you imagine the irony of Saquon breaking the record against the Giants?
I would love it. I hope he leaves a yard or two for that record for the Giants and just goes and just.
You would think he could get another 150 this week. Steelers defense tough. Maybe get 100 against the Steelers. And then Washington get another.
I don't know what his pace is after this game, but his pace prior to
he's on average for 20, or he's on pace for 21-23. So he dropped about 27 yards.
Okay, so he dropped it a little bit, but he's still on pace to break it.
Yeah,
with
the record's 20 or the record's 21:05, so he's still on pace to break it. We'll see what happens over the next.
He needs another good one, another 200 game, if
he could do that this week against the Panthers.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. If you can go out and do 250 against the Panthers, it makes the rest of the season and that Steelers game a little bit easier to swallow. Not that we're watching for a record or anything, but I mean,
but how cool would it be for a Philadelphia Eagle to have an NFL record?
And everybody, I just want to see how much the conversation shifts, because everybody is saying you break that record, you're in the MVP conversation. Without that record, everyone's like, nah, he's not going to be the MVP without that record. So I would love to see where that conversation goes and where those votes lie if he gets that record.
Clip says Giants might be so bad we could win with backups. Genuinely, crabby old man. The Giants are so bad we could win with our cheerleaders.
That's a good way to wrap up.
It is a good way to wrap up. Thank you all for tuning into this week's edition of the Victory Green Hour. The Philadelphia Eagles are now 10-2 after their 24-19 win in Baltimore over the Ravens. Next up, the Carolina Panthers at the Link. The Eagles have 5 games left, 4 of which are in Philly, in South Philadelphia, and they don't have to jump on a plane till potentially the NFC Championship game, or, depending on how things wrap up, the Super Bowl in New Orleans. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. Thank you all for all the comments. We appreciate that. As Krabby Old Man says, great show. We appreciate that. Great comments, definitely. The last couple of shows have been outstanding, have been fire, I'll say, as the young kids say, have been fire with the comments. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you all for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.